All right, welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Jeremy and Jose. I'm Jeremy. I'm joined by my tag team partner, Mr. Jose Ruiz. And this is episode 2 of the reaction show to the captain. And Jose, let's get right into it, man. What are your thoughts on episode 2?
It's and what's going on, Jeremy, man? It's it was the same thing as episode one for me. Um, there was a few things in there that I enjoyed. A couple stories in there that I enjoyed, and seeing a couple players I haven't seen on there for a while, But I'm going to be honest with you, man, because
Okay.
I love you, my brother, man. I'm like jetered out already. Like it's episode two, and I might be jetered out already. And there's nothing like has nothing to do. Well, it has something to do, obviously, with the documentary, but it's. I'll give you an example,
Mm-hmm.
right? Watching episode two, I'm enjoying it. Like I do enjoy it, you know. And I think it was Tom Verducci was on there, right? And they were, asking, like they were interviewing him, and obviously everybody knows who Tom Verducci is. So Jeter is on first, right? And then he's like, Jeter's on first base, and so what do I think they were playing the Braves or the Indians, either one. And he was like, what do? They pitch out, and Jeter doesn't run. But what does Jeter do the next pitch? He steals second. And I'm like, no shit. That's like baseball 101.
Absolutely.
Like when a team pitches out, they're not going to pitch out twice. You know what I mean? Like, so you go on the next pitch. And then he's like, yeah, and then he's on second base. And then I don't know if it was Bernie Williams that hit a little blooper, and he's like, of course, Jeter gets a great jump from second, and he scores on the single. Man, that's Derek Jeter. He's like making stuff happen, and I'm like, bro, like it was a bloop single, and he got a good jump, but 8 out of 10 players are going to score from second on that play, and it's just like I'm liking the documentary, but I knew this was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen in episode two, Jeremy.
That you will be jetered out.
I'm getting there. I'm not jetered out yet, but I'm getting there.
I do. That's the thing with Derek Jeter. I do struggle on sometimes where I get it. Like he was a part of this dynasty. He did make clutch plays. He wasn't a
Yeah.
bad player. He was a great player,
No, he's a great player. Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah.
but he's not an all time player, in my opinion.
Right.
He's a Hall of Fame. I'm not saying, but he's not. And I mean all timer. I mean the pub that Derek Jeter gets. It's like the Aaron, the Mays, the DiMaggio, the Williams.
Right.
And
Right.
that's what I say where I'm like, he's not that. He's not Ken Griffey Jr. He's not any of that. He's a Hall of Famer, but like to me, it's like he's like should be honestly like Robin Yount. Like Robin Yount's in the Hall of Fame.
Ooh.
I'm gonna be honest, and like he should be on
Ooh.
that level. Like as far as a player, as not.
Because I
Go ahead.
go ahead. No. Finish your point. I'm sorry.
Because
Finish your point.
now Jeter, Robin Yount didn't play on a historic team like that. But as far as a player, like people say, Robin Yount, great player. You don't hear people oohing and ahhing. I think Derek Jeter should be lower to me. Like he gets raved about so much as an individual player that I think that's where I strongly disagree with. So I do hear you
Yeah.
on they overhype these plays that I'm like other players did great plays like that all the time and you don't talk about them in that fashion.
You know what? And Robin Yount's a good comparison. Honestly, like because if Robin Yount played in New York, he would have been much, 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 much elevated.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot more elevated than where he's at now. Because why he played in Milwaukee,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody really. And at that time, the Brewers, early on in the '80s, they were good, but the Brewers were the Brewers, and nobody really cared about what's going on in Milwaukee. With all due respect, it reminds me of like Larry Bird, like almost like it's funny because in that I don't know if it was a 30 for 30,
No, it's the HBO one.
the HBO
For
with the
Magic and
Arsenio Hall
Bird.
thing.
Yeah, I have Magic and Bird. Yeah, it's on HBO.
That was such a great like quote, and because he was 100% right. If you missed it, Arsenio Hall, they were talking about it, and he was like, yeah, he was like, I was watching the game. And the guy made a great pass, and he was like, well, that's because he talked to Larry Bird earlier in the day, and Larry had to talk to him about making the pass. And he was like, he was getting credit for everything. I feel like Jeter is in that same thing where it's like, he's in the hole, makes a nice backhanded catch with a throw, and it's like the best play of all time. Like, now the ones that he's in the hole and he's doing the jump throws, amazing stuff. That's like all armed, like that's a lot of talent to do that. But in the hole, making that throw, it's routine, and it's the best play ever.
Well, I have something I want to say to that, and I'll say it later on because it's hitting me. It hit me in episode 1, but this episode a lot. But I like the Larry Bird comparison to an extent. The only thing to me is like the Larry Bird thing. It's true that they gave him credit for everything, but Larry Bird was a bad dude.
Yeah, he was much better.
Right. He was much greater than to me in his sport than what Derek Jeter is in baseball.
Because Bird's an all-time great.
Yeah.
Like, he's that all-time, like, top 10 of all time. Jeter is nowhere near that. Great player, but nowhere near that. But
go ahead.
I did enjoy the episode. I'll say that. And I'm not, like, here shitting on the documentary. I am enjoying it. And one thing, just like The Last Dance, the soundtrack is the shit. Like,
very good.
I'm loving the music, especially when they were in Atlanta. They were over Fulton County Stadium.
The Outkast.
The Outkast came on. I was like, that was nice. That was really good.
No, it takes me back because all my family's from down south, in Carolina, and that's all they played was Outkast, and that was always a debate. Yeah. I knew Outkast from day one because that's all of them are in Carolina, so they all were trying to hype up Southern rap, and my brother and I we used to make fun of Southern. I'll be honest, back in the day, like the mid to late 90s.
I did too.
And we were like, "That's all you got." And we never knocked out Outkast. We did like it, but we're like, "That's all you got is Outkast. That's all you got is Outkast."
That's all they have for a while.
Yeah, it's like
and please, if you're from North Carolina, Don't hit me with no Goody Mob or something like that. Like you can keep that.
No,
Outkast, I'll give you Outkast.
And I'll say this: Southern rap has gotten a lot better over the years.
Oh yeah,
but for a long time you were Outkast, and that's it. I gotta be honest. And it's maybe if you were Scarface, that's deep. You got Scarface in Houston, but like
that's Houston. Yeah,
that's that's Southwestish. But like I'll give you want to throw in Scarface, okay? But for a long time, that's all you had.
We'll give you Outkast, maybe Luke. You know what I mean? Like we'll give you Luke.
Luke's even rough, but the soundtrack is really good. The
soundtrack is great.
What I'll say right now, to be quite honest, I did like this episode, and I'm not going to say we'll see where the rest of the 3-4 next 5 episodes go. Right now, it's making me feel like this should have been a 7-part doc on the Yankee dynasty, honestly.
Right. It's almost like, I don't want to say it's the opposite of The Last Dance, but it almost is. Like the way, like you mentioned it in our last episode when, we talked about episode 1, it's like, and you mentioned like Last Dance and how it was hyped up for that Bulls dynasty, but turned into, after like episode 4, turned into like the Michael Jordan show, which is fine by me, but it was hyped up as that Bulls run in '98, where here it's just like a Jeter thing, but it's a lot about everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and just like we talked about in our last episode, we knew we were getting Joe Torre, and they opened the episode right up with that, which it was cool to see. But one thing I didn't know, and maybe I heard it, I just don't remember because I don't remember shit, but that they hired Joe Torre, but then they were trying to like go back to Buck Showalter, like, you know what I mean? And Buck was like, "Nah, I'm out. I'm going to Arizona." And I didn't know that.
It's funny. I said it to you.
Well, there you go. My memory is shit.
No, it was a while ago. It's on our podcast, so everyone check the podcast archives.
Check the archives. Check.
It's when Justin McGuire from the Baseball by the Book podcast came on our show. So that's December of 2020. So it was a long time ago. But I was talking. He had a guest on. I believe it was Bill Pennington, who wrote this book. From chumps to champs about the '90s Yankees, and he told that story on Justin's podcast. Because I was like, we were talking about, which is funny now that we're doing this a year and a half later. It was like, what baseball team would you want a last dance type of thing on? And it was like the '90s Yankees. And so like, and I'm like,
I do remember
hearing that story about Buck Showalter because I'm thinking, what would that have looked like if you hire Joe Torre and then you have a big New York press conference, then you bring back Buck after firing him, and then you move Joe. I'm like, I'd rather just
that
eat it.
Looked crazy.
I'd rather just eat it for a year. You know what I mean? Be like, I want Buck. Like in '97, we're bringing you back, but let's just go with this. Then, like to do all that, like that'd be like awful in my opinion.
But I can see George Steinbrenner doing that though, with no problem. You know what I mean? Like so, I forgot that you said that to me, but I thought that was interesting. But again, them opening up with Joe Torre and. Because I remember Joe Torre in St. Louis, when he was coaching in St. Louis, and, he was just, a coach. Like, you know what I mean? It was nothing special there. And, and then when he went to New York, I was surprised, when he went to New York. And then they had the back page of the New York Times or whichever one, New York papers, that was saying Clueless Joe. Mm-hmm. Dang, that's brutal right there, man. And then for him to come in and won the World Series in year one, man, says a lot about Joe Torre.
I liked what he said, though, explaining that he had done it 3 times, been fired, and, he's thinking his managing career is done. So him getting this job, it was kind of like the reason why he was calm was it was easy. It was, house money for him.
Right. It was whatever happens.
Yeah, so I was cool to hear him say that because I always wondered how he stayed so steady where it was no matter what you won the World Series the next year before, your job's on the line every year. You're in a dynasty.
Yeah.
And it's still like, are you bringing him back? I wondered how did he stay so calm for over a decade in that kind of atmosphere. Because to me, like you see Brian Cashman in it, it's amazing he's been there that long. Brian Cashman to me showed angst. He never seemed like, oh, he's so steady. Brian Cashman seemed like he's just like great, like
always on edge. Yeah.
So like Joe always seemed calm. Brian Cashman, the GM, always seemed like, George is going to call.
Stressed out.
Yeah, George is calling. Like he seems calmer. Post, honestly, God rest his soul, George dying. I see a calmer Brian Cashman, in my opinion.
And what was interesting that he said was when he was thinking about taking the job, he was like, I wanted the job, but he was like, I felt like it was like I was closer to like my last day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Once I took the job, because people in this position don't last too long. And that sucks. If you are like in a position where you like an organization and you're like doing well, because he was obviously helping picking all these guys and developing some of these players, and we're not developing them, but just getting them there, and for him to think like that, it's got to suck, man. It's got to make your time rough, man, at that job. So, but he's there. You know what I mean? Like, so he's doing something right.
Now, a part of this documentary that surprised me, which we talked about last episode, we knew A-Rod was going to be a big part of this. I didn't think he would come in episode 2.
Yeah, that was quick.
That was very quick.
That was quick.
So now that story, they talk about how they were fast friends and all that stuff. That story about that reporter saying, A-Rod and Jeter were on the cover of a magazine, and A-Rod
Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, and A-Rod's sitting down, and Jeter's like kind of has his arm around him. It's after Jeter won AL Rookie of the Year and World Series, but I'm glad the guy said it because I thought back then too. I'm like, Jeter did have a really awesome rookie year, but A-Rod even from day one was like, he is better.
He might have been the best player in the league.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like he had a amazing season. What do you like 360 or something like that?
So it's like I don't know how Jeter won Rookie of the Year, but okay, I do know how.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we know how, but it's funny that the reporter telling that story, like, this is going to be my last joint interview with Derek, and him saying, reporter allegedly says that Alex Rodriguez said that, Derek has his arm around me and I'm clearly the better player. Now, A-Rod comes on and says that's not true. They're trying to divide. What do you think?
I think it's 100% true because you don't deny it like that. You don't deny it saying that's not accurate. Like, no, I'm like, no, I don't even say that. Like, who's like, you know what I mean? I'm like I'm really animated at that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was not. He was just like, that's not accurate. They're trying to divide it, like you said, and they've been trying to divide it since day one. Like, no, dude, like, and the way the reporter was telling the story,
Mm-hmm.
like, and look, I get it. Like, some media guys, like, they make stuff up, but this is like 20 years later. You know what I mean? Almost
25.
Yeah, and it's like, why would he still want to come on here and like still continue to come up with a fake story at this point in time? Like,
well,
and it makes sense.
And
it makes sense what he was talking about.
To me, also, I look at it granted, unless you're like this really good liar, when you can have details and you can kind of go over boom, 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 that helps you. Then when you just say, no, I didn't do that, it's like, well,
right.
You obviously talked to this. There was a conversation. So what happened?
Yeah.
Like, what was that conversation? Where did it get misconstrued, or is it totally off? Something. And A-Rod doesn't have that. He's talking about, we were just about baseball and winning and two brothers. And I'm like, man, A-Rod doing that phony stuff. He's doing
the brothers thing got me. The brother thing got me. Yeah.
Because also A-Rod's actions a few years later proves that reporter is right.
That's what I was about to say too. Like, let's go back, and I don't remember a whole lot of interviews of them two together around that time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not. So, I think it's true. I think it's 100% true. Because again, like, the picture seemed fine to me. Like, there's just two guys. Like, one dude has his arm around them. But if you haven't seen the picture, it's just like A-Rod sitting there and Jeter's like leaning on him, and it doesn't look like A-Rod's beneath him, but that's how he took it. You know what I mean? And he was 100% right, though. Even the reporter said it. He was like, I told him he was right. Like, he was right to say that he was a better baseball player. I thought he was a better baseball player, but he felt some type of way, which I get. It might have been the Rookie of the Year thing. Like, there's no way Jeter should have won that. A-Rod had an amazing season, and they talked about that in the episode. It was like one of the best seasons of all time, and Jeter comes up on top, though.
What I liked also, you've referenced it before, I think even the last episode, there was 3 shortstops for that run from the mid-90s to the early to mid-2000s, and I like seeing Nomar Garciaparra. I hope we see him again. It was very quick.
It was quick, though.
It was very quick. It was very quick. But I feel like he's so forgotten and forgotten how great of a player he was in that era for a time that, obviously Jeter had the better career. He lasted longer. Yeah. But you can make a point that there's 3, dynamic shortstops in the American League. And for
young, too.
Very young. They had it all. They had the sex appeal, they had the looks and the charisma and Madison Avenue and minus A-Rod, but Seattle was hot still in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
But the other 2,
they were a young hot team.
Yeah, and
you got Boston and New York.
Yeah, the city was pretty good, but and we know what New York is and what Boston is, so it all fit. But you can make a case that Jeter was the worst of the 3 for a good amount of years.
Oh, he was. Like, he absolutely was. And we did an episode on, Pedro Martinez in that 1999 season and that amazing All-Star appearance. Who was the starting shortstop that season for that All-Star game? It was Nomar. Now, yes, it's in Boston. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that played a big part in it. But this dude was good. Like, he was really, really good. And I agree. In that era, I looked at it was A-Rod. Nomar was kind of close to A-Rod. and then it was Jeter.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, and you had Kyle Ripken and all these other guys, but Omar Vizquel, you had a bunch of other guys coming in there, but you know, it was A-Rod, Nomar, and Jeter for sure. I think even Jeter would say that, but I don't know.
I don't think so.
For a minute there, especially early on, man, he better say that
I
shit.
think Jeter has that pride. Remember, I was just about winning.
Yeah, I don't care about stats.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Now,
Like,
what I'll say, this is starting to make me look at Jeter a little bit differently. You hear in episode 1, you hear in episode 2 in these documentaries where he's like, I love when people are watching. I like the lights on.
right, he says that a lot.
He says it a lot, and to me, I'm like, and I'm not here to bag on Derek Jeter, honestly, like because I respect him, and he made clutch. He was definitely a clutch, one of those clutch players
Yeah,
in any sport that I've seen, and he deserves those championships. He deserves the Hall of Fame. He was a great player, but some of those plays I felt like when it was a prime time game, there was a lot more dramatic, like those jump throws. It was a little more like you don't need to do all that, bro. And I don't know what the truth is, but I'm just hearing him say that and seeing what, like, if you're smart, which Jeter is very media savvy, image.
Oh, yeah.
He kind of, I feel like it was helped by his parents, but I feel like just from his upbringing, he naturally knew image is everything. Perception is everything. And, it's that Sugar Ray Leonard thing where it's like, if I look good at the end of the round, I win the round. And to me, it's like he makes those highlight kind of plays. He jumps out over an A-Rod or a Garcia Parra or other people. And when he says, I love when people are watching. I love it. And I believe he loves the big moment. I think that's part of it, too. He wants to be the hero, of course. But I'm starting to get a vibe, Jose, that it's like he can show off and get that highlight reel too, and and he sticks out.
Yeah, and people eat it up, and the people in New York were definitely eating it up. And I mean, some of those jump throws were some really good plays, though, man. Like, but I get it. Some of them may have been like a little exaggerated. You know what I mean?
Some of them weren't needed. Some of them was just like make the throw.
Yeah, and even defensively, I would put A-Rod over Jeter. You know what I mean? Like, because Jeter, again, like, and if you could, I know we got a lot of fans or a lot of listeners who are into like sabermetrics and analytics, and if you look at those numbers, like his field and stuff, they're not like tremendously good. No, like, you know what I mean? And he's winning Gold Gloves. Like, I don't know.
He should never have won one. Honestly, Jeter to A-Rod, he's a worse player all around. Jeter with Nomar, he's definitely worse hitter.
Yeah.
Defensively, Nomar wasn't known for the defense as much like that. He was.
Yeah, I think Jeter is a little better. Yeah, he had more range than Nomar.
Nomar wasn't the deep, but that's where it's like Jeter doesn't. He's not last in defense of the three of those guys. But I just kind of have been picking that up. He likes the moments. And to me, that's kind of what Jeter did a lot of times. And it was a lot of like he knew how to work that. And the stories, I do see what you're saying, because let's go to the David Wells story.
Right.
Where to me, it's like, I kind of would, if I being objective, and the story for those, if you haven't seen the movie, episode 2 yet, is the regular season game. I think it's against the Orioles, and there's David Wells is on the mound pitching. There's a pop up, and it's like Jeter, a couple other guys. They're kind of like, no one claims the ball, and it just drops right in between three dudes. And David Wells kind of puts his arms up on the mound in frustration. And,
like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, and Jeter's like, we don't do that shit around here. And people, that young guy, to say that to Derek Jeter and all that.
What a leader. And
I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, now, if that play didn't involve him at all and he did that, I can give him credit. I would give him more credit. But to me, it's like, he didn't like being shown up, which I don't blame him.
Yeah, because it wasn't his fault. Like, it was.
Yeah.
It's an outfielder.
But to me, it's not like the leader. It's just like he's calling somebody out for showing him up. Like,
right.
you know what I mean? That's all I see. It's like if that didn't
Yeah, he
involve
was
him
pissed
and
off,
he
yeah.
stepped up for other people, I'm like, yeah, as a young guy, that's pretty big. But I'm like, he didn't want to be shown up. Yeah, and he's not wrong. But I'm like, why are we overhyping that?
I don't, yeah, and Buster Olney was all over it, and and then he called the first baseman and third baseman and second baseman. Did you hear me say I was going to, whatever? And yeah, it's again, like I'm going to say it over and over. Like I know, and I know we have fans in New York, and I know we have listeners that are big time Yankees fans, and I know he's a great player, but it's just like it's those stories, man, are like exaggerated, and I just think it's because he played shortstop for the Yankees.
One thing I'll say I did like also is so far what I'm seeing is, to me, when you look at the second half of the 90s, like the Bulls in Chicago, that was the biggest team in sports. I felt like this Yankee team was a close second, where
Yeah,
they were that big, they were that
yeah,
iconic, they were like, the 90s Bulls were the Beatles, these guys are the Rolling Stones. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like there's a lot of attention, and that, you talked about, I talked about growing up. For me, before 96, that whole Yankee thing, the brand was just like, yeah, Mickey Mantle, and oh, it was a dead brand.
yeah,
Now it's the brand in sports.
yep,
But they went a long time where that brand was kind of suffering, like a for a while, and it turned around in that 96 or 96 on. And so, to me, showing how big that a lot of these guys were, but definitely number one, Derek Jeter.
yeah. It was cool how they talked about that, because you're right. It's because I never understood the Yankee thing until the late '90s, and I was like, man, like a lot of people love this team. You know what I mean? And I know it's like a lot of bandwagon fans. It's like the Lakers fans and all that, but still, this team is loved by in a lot of places, and they don't even have to travel well, fans, because they're there everywhere. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And but yeah, this team was. I remember this team. We're talking '96, and then obviously '97. They were still in the playoffs. Then that '98 season comes, and it's just like, whoa! Like I might. That's probably the best team I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But this team was big, and they just had a lot of like, and we talked about it in our last episode. Like they had a mix of great young talent and like really good veteran players. You know what I mean? Like some veterans that were great players before and now are on here and they know their role and they accept their role and they just do that really well. It was just such a great mix. This team was put together perfectly.
Yeah, and it's that mix. Is before George started buying up people.
Yeah.
He was letting what Gene Michael and Watson, had create, let guys develop, and they were, and that's what I have to give credit for. That eventually, and we'll probably see it, it became just free agent frenzy and buying up, the best, hottest free agent. But that initial run that we've seen in the first two episodes, it was great drafting, great trades, great, reclamation projects, and a
Yeah.
Strawberry, and Tim Raines, and
Wade
Wade
Boggs
Boggs,
and
Dwight Gooden.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
like it was a good mix of that too. So you have to give it credit. I know we point to they have all the money, and they do have a lot of money, but that Yankee dynasty, that 96 to 2000 run, was built very smart and very well done.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And the one thing that I did enjoy too, which and I enjoyed, and then I was like, oh, of course, like when they had on the Puff Daddy or P Diddy or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever y'all know him now. You know what I mean? Like I knew him as Puff. Like
Yeah, same.
so that like whole like incident with him and J Lo, and then whoever the other dude, the barber dude or whoever that was,
Mike
I don't
something.
know where he. Yeah, I don't know where he came from, but or maybe I just don't know who he is.
I don't know him
But
either.
I never heard of him. I never heard of him, and he just I came out of nowhere. But like that was an interesting story on. And if you know, if you haven't watched the episode, like there was an incident with Sean Combs and J Lo, and they were at the club, and then altercation, shots, whatever. Everyone's arrested. It was another rapper, Shine, who had to take all the blame and do some time, and there's stories on that too.
Yeah,
but
Puff was dirty for that one.
Yeah, threw him under the bus a little bit. But the point of this, it's like Derek Jeter was supposed to be hanging out with them as well, and he was just like, I'm tired. I got a game tomorrow, so he kind of didn't go and hang out and avoided a major incident that, again, he would have probably been a part of, because that was the crew that he was going to go and hang out with. So I thought that was interesting, because obviously I didn't know that was going to be the case. I didn't know Derek Jeter was going to hang out with them.
Yeah.
But it shows like you can be great. You need some luck in there too. You know what I mean? Like, and he was very lucky that he was not part of this, because that would have, this beautiful sunshine what Derek Jeter is, it would have been tarnished a little bit there.
Been tarnished a lot. It would have been tarnished a lot, and depending on how, I don't believe he would have been like involved, but the fact that he's, if
he would have been hanging out with them, and then that happens, it's still a story.
There's pictures of him there, paparazzi seeing him hanging out earlier that night, and all those things, and knowing how the Yankee organization was and still is about image and stuff like that. Yeah, that's not going to be great. You see, that's what's weird, and I don't know the production. Obviously, I'm fascinated by it, but then I'm like, is that a director or like a producer's call, where it's like all these stories are coming from everybody else, and Derek's given very little. But it's like these other people bringing up the story, so then I'm like, is it Derek like allowing? Like, I don't know what it is, because it's like that barber guy, he tells the story, and then he sets it up, and then Derek's like, it would have been really bad. Like, like it would have. Like, he doesn't really give a lot. Like, even like it gets into. He talks most is like that he went out a lot. He was young, and they were winning, and different nights of the week. It was China Club.
Yeah, he was naming all the spots.
Yeah. The only thing, which I hate, I don't, because some athletes it's pretty well documented. Like Michael Irvin has said, if there's social media and cameras on phones when he played, it would have been a wrap in those Cowboy teams. But you know what those guys did. It's out there. Yeah. But like when Derek Jeter says it, he's like, I would have made it 3 years and that's it. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, I do, but I don't. Like, what does that mean? And that's okay, but it's like, that's like the most he's given. And it's just like, because you were out late, because you got the girls coming into the car, people see it. Like, what? Girls will be leaving the place and people will be catching that. Like, what do you mean?
But I also think he would have just adjusted, and you know what I mean? Like, and it would have been something different. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't really buy that. I don't either. He would adjust it. And the thing is, like, you can sit there and say, like these stars today, these athletes today have to be so concerned with that. And it's like, no, they know how to do that. Like, they've grown up in that era. You know what I mean? They've grown up with the cell phones. They've grown up with like people recording and taking pictures of everywhere. So you adjust and you know what to do and where not to do it. So yeah, do people still get caught and doing dumb shit? Yeah, like that's going to happen. But I just think I don't really buy the 3-year thing, which I get. He's just exaggerating a little bit, but I just thought that was interesting. Then you got like Fat Joe coming on, and I'm like, I'm Fat Joe'd out. I've been Fat Joe'd out for about a year now. I love Fat Joe, Puerto Rico stand up, but he needs to go away for a little bit and stop talking a lot. And
Fat Joe, it's like, who's benefited from this pandemic? It's like Bezos and Amazon. It's like some of these other billionaires, and it's like Fat Joe. Fat Joe has benefited so good from this thing, and I like listening to his story. But Fat Joe has he's
everywhere.
From the Instagram live show to the Fat Chopra moment, and that now he's on every like documentary that deals with like the '90s. If it's like the '90s in New York,
and he's like this sports historian all of a sudden. Like, he was on that.
The street ball.
And the street ball and 130 for 30. He was all a part of that. And I know, and not to get like away too much, but I know he was big on that Rucker League and all that. I do know that. I'll give him that. So, but he's like he's Bob Costas now all of a sudden. Like he's everywhere, like in documentaries. And I'm like, let's go away for a little bit.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm like, I know you were around, you were in it, but I'm like if honestly, if Puff is in all these things, Puff was like one of the kings of New York in that time. Joe was a big deal. I'm not saying he wasn't, but I'm like, were you really in all these rooms? Like, it's like, really? You was in all these rooms? I'm just like, okay. I'm like,
I mean, I will say that like Joe was a big deal. Like Joe especially in the Hispanic community, that was our guy. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Like, and I know there's
the brothers love Joe too. Like, black community like Fat Joe too. Not like obviously not like the Puerto Rican community, but Joe's there. I'm just like he's not someone I go like. That's why I'm kind of like with you. Like, there's certain people. Like I said, if Puff's in all these things, I'm like, yeah, he was. You just knew he was there. He was running New York. He was everywhere. Where I'm like, were you really in all these spots all the time? Like how often were you with Jeter?
Right. But again, they're probably running in the same clubs. I don't know. I'm not even trying to figure all that out. But like that, when the dude was on there, I'm gonna call him the barber dude. I gotta get his name. But,
Mike something.
Mike Greer. I don't know, something like that. But wait, wasn't he a hockey player, Mike Greer? But when he just told the story, like Puff was like, "No, I'm the king of New York, but we're gonna name you the Prince of New York." I was like, just shoot me right now, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how corny is that? But whatever,
it's the
man.
90s
Puff's the king. Yeah, Puff's the king. Like,
it's the 90s for you.
I know Puff's big though. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like
it's just certain people you're like. And also, we grew up like we saw that too.
Yeah.
So it's that part. Is not like the fresh history. It's like, it's like that is like, I remember that real well. Like, I remember all that real well. So it's like, all right.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, Joe's everywhere. But I really do think my favorite part of episode 2 is definitely the 96 run, but the 96 World Series when they highlighted that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. Like, it was probably the only. I mean, I really honestly feel since that World Series, the Yankees haven't really been an underdog. It's like all these over 25 years later, it's like they haven't been that like underdog. But that was like the last time that they were. And when Jim Leyritz hits that home run to tie it in Game 4. I love to see like the whole Yankee dugout coming out and greeting
that shit erupted.
Yeah, because that's not something you see in baseball all the time, but they all walk out the dugout. Like, you see high fives in it, but like, as you see the clips here, like, but like the whole team's out the dugout at Fulton County Stadium in Atlanta, and giving that high five, and it kind of goes to connect to episode 1. When Mattingly is talking about how in like 95 they were all about it, that energy kind of carried over, and then you have a year's experience into 96 to win that World Series.
Right, because I think, and George Steinbrenner said it, like, we had our kids there, like, so they can experience all of that. Buck Showalter was talking about it in episode 1. I agree with you there. I mean, I think that experience, them being there, and seeing the energy from those veteran players carried over to them, and like now they're like, all right, well, this is how we have to do it. You know what I mean? Like, and they're setting the tone now for that team. Like, those young guys were the best players on this 96 team, 97 team, 98. Like, obviously at that point they're becoming veterans, but again, it was a mix of like them young guys, like that 5 core that we were talking about in episode 1, and then the vets, but. If you have these young guys like all spirited like that, that rubs off. You know what I mean? That rubs off to the whole team, and and I'm glad. And you're right, because I wanted to talk about that a little bit too, like that '96 World Series, and people forget that, going into that series, myself included, the Braves are going to win this World Series. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they just coming off a World Series. This is the team of the 90s, quote unquote, which they're not. But, we were calling them that because, this is already from 91. This team is already in World Series and winning division after division after division. And they go up 2-0, in New York. Yeah, were they in? Yeah, they were in New York. And you got my guy Andrew Jones stepping onto the scene at 19 years old. It was good to see him. A couple highlights of Andrew Jones on there, but it's like, damn, these guys are just going to go ahead and destroy the Yankees back-to-back World Series. We're looking at probably one of the greatest teams of all time now. Here it comes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and for the Yankees to come back and win that was big time. You know what I mean? So again, with that series, what I always come back and think about, like, was it the Yankees that came back and played really well, which they did, but turned that series around, or was it the Braves that gave that series away? What do you think, Devin?
I'm going to be honest. I give it more to the Yankees. I do think the Braves let it slip away, but the Yankees rallied. They did stay. Because remember, the Yankees not only lost the first two games in New York, they got shellacked. Like, there was like a 12-2 game.
It was 12-1, I think, or 12-2, the first game.
They got dominated.
And they were down 6-0 in that third game.
Or fourth game. I think they got game
fourth game.
So they're gotten. So to stay, and you hear Jeter in this episode say, all you got to do is win one game. Like, that's where it starts. You got to say that it starts there, that you're not – because it's very easy, and we've talked about it in a lot of these episodes we've done on our podcast, if you listen to them, where momentum can shift with a team, with individual. It can go like that. So the stay the course is so impressive, and the stay the course as a player, but then as a collective unit is very impressive, and especially after you're the underdog and you just get embarrassed in the first two games on your home field, and then you got three. I'm sure a lot of people. I remember a lot of people were thinking this series is not coming back to New York. It's gonna wrap up in Atlanta. So I give the Yankees credit. The Braves. That was really the start, in my opinion, of you start questioning what happens to this team in the fall. That 96 World Series is where you go. So, like, they have part in it too, but I want to give it number one to the Yankees.
Yeah, the Yankees definitely rallied back, and again, I think looking back, I mean, I don't even know looking back who was the better team. You know what I mean? Like, on paper, for sure, it was really, really close. That Braves team was loaded. And again, they were the same thing. A lot of young, great players, good mix of veteran guys too. So it was a good World Series. I remember I was excited for that World Series. Another team that is not really like getting talked about in the first two episodes, but it's everywhere on this documentary, is the Cleveland Indians. Like, and I forgot, because all I think about the 95 Cleveland Indians, right? Losing to Atlanta, whatever. But they lost to this Yankees team like 4 times in this run, like in the playoffs. Like, if this Yankees team wasn't so good, this Cleveland team may have a World Series or something like that. So that was something that just, for me, it just kind of stuck out. Because, again, you're constantly seeing them in these highlights, in these playoff highlights with the Yankees that they constantly losing. So I know 97 they beat them, but still, like,
I'm going opposite.
They're always there.
I'm going opposite, honestly, because to me, like, and you're not wrong at all, but Cleveland had them. To me, Cleveland in 97 against the Marlins, that's where, like, that was their chance. And obviously, you're right, they could have gone. But I look at, honestly, the Orioles and how much we're seeing them in the highlights. And now, historically and even present day, Yankees, Red Sox is the rivalry. But as you can see, when the Yankees were coming up, they were worried about the Baltimore Orioles. The Red Sox weren't good at that point. They're looking at Baltimore, and Baltimore's a good team.
Baltimore's a really good team, yeah.
Brady Anderson, we know he was on the juice. But
Yeah.
him getting 50 home runs that year, and Baltimore.
Yeah, Mike Piscina was winning 20 games, I think, that year. Like, it
got
had a
Davey
really, really
Johnson
good
as
team.
a skip. Like they were, Pat Gillick was a part of building that team up. So,
Genius.
so it was really just fun to see that. Because I'll be honest, for you and all our viewers, I go down many rabbit holes on YouTube. Obviously, we love sports history, so you just go down. One of them is baseball brawls. I will just get lost in different great brawls, recent ones, old school, and over the past, especially over the pandemic, it really stepped up. And one of the ones I can say I watched the '98 because it wasn't. I'm glad they got the year right too. It was in '98. I look for that kind of stuff. That Benitez pegging Tino with the ball, and then Darryl coming out of nowhere and hitting Benitez. That was
Sucker punched him.
He did. That's one of the and you get clips in the episode. If you go on YouTube, after this show, go on and look up that brawl. It's longer and it's real epic, and it is a big one. And that's one of the ones I watch all the time. And so to hear Strauss saying we had to show Baltimore, you're not going to do that. That meant something, because if that was, the Angels or the A's, I don't think he's saying that. But because it was Baltimore, that division rival, who that mattered, it could have been the Blue Jays at that time. I don't think he's saying it, but him being like, we had to show Baltimore, that stuck out to me.
No, that's a great point. And because, again, like, if you're young and you don't remember, you're not seeing Boston in any of these two episodes yet. You know what I mean? Like, that's coming. We know that's coming, but you're exactly right. The mid-'90s, late '90s, Red Sox, well, I want to say the late '90s, but like the mid-'90s, that was another team. We were talking about that Yankees, that Yankees mystique when we were growing up was nowhere near their, early '90s and mid-'90s, the Boston thing was not there either, for me. So
no.
I know they had like Clemens in the late '80s, early, you know what I mean? Like they had that, but what we know of Boston today, where they get all the free agents now too, and that was not the case, back then. So
I will say this comment, and just but our listeners, and I don't knock any, we're love just keeping it real, talking history. We give our opinions. We talk about how we are as fans, but that doesn't affect, how we give an opinion here. The Red Sox that we know from, the early 2000s to now, the Red Sox nation and all that, and how the country is with them, is totally an ESPN creation, in my opinion. Where the Yankees did have that mystique, and it was like lost, that Red Sox mystique was never there. It has been like in Boston, it was, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But this national thing was a total ESPN creation, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I never heard of Red Sox Nation.
Yeah.
Until ESPN and Baseball Tonight was pumping Red Sox Nation and Bloody Sock and all this stuff in my face, and I was like, where did all these Boston fans come from? And I know you get bandwagon fans when you win, and I get that. But yeah, the Red Sox were not a thing to me growing up, as a kid. And then again, we just did an episode on Pedro Martinez. So once they started getting Pedro Martinez and then Randy Ramirez and you got David Ortiz, now for me, that gets my attention. You know what I'm saying? When you have a lot of some really good Latin players on your team, I'm always like that Cleveland Indians team was the same way. It had a lot of Latin players, and I was all on that, but so I agree, man, with those two teams. Those two teams were the teams that were in the Yankees' way,
right,
and to get into these World Series. So I'm glad they're not really getting talked about a lot, but you're seeing a whole lot of activity from these organizations, which is cool because nowadays, especially with Baltimore, I mean, I know they're having a good season this year, but this is a fluke season, in my opinion, for them. But it's the Baltimore Orioles were a great organization for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was growing up, they were great. Jeremy, I know we were just mentioning that, so it's cool to see highlights of that and stuff. But again, that Darryl Strawberry thing was what it stuck out to me too.
No, and even the Jeffrey Mayer, the robbery of the home run.
I like that. He should have jumped. I like that. I did like that.
I did too.
So that was cool. That was cool.
I did too. And that's a testament to Jeter, because honestly, I thought that was going to be a bigger part of his career, but that he's had a lot. He stayed around a while. Like that's like lesser of a footnote in his career history and that dynasty. And I do agree with the Yankees. I mean, Baltimore got robbed in that
Yeah,
game, but the Yankees
it
are
didn't
going to
matter.
win. It doesn't matter. When you lose 4-1, how can you say, like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's how I always feel. Like, how can you say that? Like, you lost 4 games to 1. If they would have lost in 7, even maybe 6, I would have thought about it. Definitely 7. You lost in 5. Like, no, come on, man.
yeah, yeah.
But I'll ask, try to wrap it up here. What is your grade for episode 2?
Mm, I forgot about the grades. I gave episode 1 an A minus. I'll give this one a B plus, a strong B plus. I'm enjoying it. I'm talking a lot of shit, but I'm enjoying it. It's just again like there's certain people in my sports memory that if I get too much of them, it gets to me.
I,
Jeter's one.
I'm flipping. I'm flipping B plus to an A minus.
Okay.
And even though right now they're doing, but it, I know it's going to be like weird, but I'm because it's kind of about the team and like they're really using that right now. That helps, and I feel like I don't know. I don't know what the director. We love to talk to him if we ever could, but like
Yeah.
because I think if you went about Jeter's journey and even like you mix it in, but how he's doing, you kind of see what he's going to give you. He might say, "I was struggling, I was like." He's not going to really give you
Right.
like even like, and I think that's him expressing himself. But he said in this episode, "What do you want?" Well, he's very guarded, protective. So the fact that it's like I give him as a film fan. He's using these teammates, these other people to kind of spring the story, and they're telling the narrative, and Derek just has to give a little
Yeah, it's
comment,
comment on it.
a little
Yeah.
comment, or a little like, no, like I did this and that. It's a smart filmmaking technique, and I applaud it. And I think definitely the come up was great, but to see now for episode 2 them emerge, especially him as these superstars, these kings of New York, these kings of the sports world, it was very interesting episode to see. Because I remember like a lot of times I think we think about when we were yankeed out in the 2000s and we tired of them and tired of Steinbrenner to go fire Tory and I feel like after a while they
Yeah.
kept winning and they're just kind of create headlines. But I do remember that was a special time in 96, 97, 98 where it's like, oh, this is not just a fluky win. This is something really special here. So it was cool to see that and hear all these guys talk about it. So I'm giving it an A minus for this episode.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, like this run here, this early run, it wasn't like a bought. It wasn't a bought championship like their recent championships have been. Um, this was like they've really this organization worked hard, on getting these and drafting well, and getting these mix of veterans in there, creating this team and creating and changing like the whole culture of this Yankee organization from what it was in the 80s and late 80s to what it turned out to be, which is, and I can understand why this, the Yankee fan base loved this team. Because it was just, they were hard nosed, blue collar, all that stuff. And if I was a fan of the Yankees, I would have loved this team too. So,
Mm-hmm.
so what do you think they got for episode 3? Like I'm thinking this is where we see some Red Sox stuff in episode 3.
Yeah, I think we're going to start getting a little bit of that. I feel like you're going to have some.
Because he ended it with the arbitration thing.
I think what you're going to get. I think you're going to get the Steinbrenner. Remember, Steinbrenner makes comments about him partying, and they do that corny. They do that corny with that MasterCard or American Express commercial afterwards.
Yeah.
But like Jeter didn't like that Steinbrenner made the comments about him partying too much. So I think you're setting up where, and now they're using Cashman too. So it's going to be a whole front office thing, and not just a Steinbrenner thing. Which okay, like, so I guess he's going to get some of it too. But I think you're going to get that. Like that, they're setting up that thing. I feel like they might go to like either they're going to tease some more A-Rod stuff. So I think we're going to get that. What I want to see, I'll be honest, I got the book in my house from like years ago, and it was an all right book. But I always am fascinated by. And I know you can maybe call it five, but they're known by the core four and their dynamic and their relationship. It's kind of like, when you have a group like that, it's like they're all tight, but there's two that are tighter. Some are tighter with others. So like I
Yeah,
kind of want to see that. Like I know like Jeter's tight with all of them, but like I know he's tight with Posada. But I kind of just like want to see like some more core four. I think that is really cool how like the four of them came up together,
yeah,
and
that is cool.
they're all like those same personalities too, but dedicated to
Yep.
winning. And honestly, I loved how when each of them retired, the other three were there, a big part of it. Like that stuff that no matter
That was cool.
what team I could root for you, root against you, that's always going to tug at the heartstrings because it's that brotherhood, those teammates. So I'm hoping. I think what you're definitely going to get is the Steinbrenner front office thing, some A-Rod teasing. I'm hoping for some core four to be explored. The next episode or two more.
Yeah, I also think 9/11 it's got to be a part of this next episode because they're doing like 3 seasons per episode roughly. Like that's how I'm getting that feel. I mean, the first episode obviously they got to like build Jeter up from early on, but this one was what 96, 97,
98.
98, 98, 98. Yeah, so now we're getting into
And
99
well, they got
season.
99 right with Scott Brocious,
Oh yeah, they did.
or that
Yeah,
98.
so the home run off of
Yeah,
Hoffman.
that's 98, right?
That's 98. Yeah,
So they
that's
they
98.
kind of got into it. So they didn't get 99.
Yeah, so that it was 98 off season with like the Jeter stuff and I'm done and like
Yeah.
whatever. And then now they're going into the 99 season. So that's why I feel like the Red Sox come into play now because they had a good season, and I think obviously a couple years later, 9/11 happened. So and we all know how big of a part of like sports coming back the Yankees
Well,
were for
let's be
that.
real.
So
How big of Jeter's legacy that run, with the flip toss against
yep,
Oakland, and then the home run, Mr. November against the Diamondbacks in the World Series. Even though I'm pretty sure I don't think his numbers were that good in that series, though.
yeah, I don't remember.
I'm not
I just
sure. I kind of felt like it has a great home run, but I didn't think he had a great series. But I could be off. So people watching, forgive me. I'm going off the top of the dome, but those moments are two of the big moments, like of his
yeah,
legacy.
yep,
And so I think 9/11 is a big thing, and also though that playoff, those plays.
yeah. So we'll see. But again, like well, both our grades are we're averaging an A as right now. You gave him a B plus earlier in episode 1. I gave him an A minus, and then we flip flop that. So we're both averaging out to an A, which is good. It means we're both enjoying it. So
And I'll say an addendum here. Thanks, Jack, for that word.
yeah, yeah,
you know, we have been hard on 30 for 30 in ESPN films the past like couple years, and I think rightfully so. Like
yeah.
they haven't been as good. As much as like in episode 1, our recap talking about them, and like the Last Dance disappointing, the Tom Brady was disappointing. I can say this, and we haven't done. I love doing an episode in the future on it, but recently, like we know so far they're doing well with this. Um, the Dream On about the '96 Women's Olympic was one of the
That
best
was
things
good.
That was great, and I thought like
That's been one of the best in the last couple of years.
and that's one of my favorites. And I thought like they should do that for when they do women's sports. ESPNW need to put that kind of production because I hadn't seen them
Yep.
put that production into a topic that's about women's sports, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, so I thought that was really great. Like, I was hooked all 3 episodes. That was one of my
Yeah.
favorite
Yeah.
things they've done.
That was good.
It's high up there. And the Dickie V documentary I thought was pretty good. And I
Yeah, I'm
know,
on that tonight.
yeah. So I know we give our opinions, and that when they're not good, we're going to be real with you. But overall, I've loved 30 for 30 since it came out, and for the rough ones they've had the past couple of years, I got to give props that they do have some good ones too, still in there.
Yeah.
So
And I needed these. Like I really needed these. We've been talking about it for the last couple maybe years at this point, like last 2 years, maybe year and a half, that again, like you mentioned, some of them let me down for sure. I know they let you down a little bit. We've been talking about it on the show. If you've been listening to it for a little while, so I'm excited. I'm excited again. Like the Dream On one was a great one. Like I'm going to watch that Dickie V one. This one's been really good so far. So hopefully they're back on that rebound because again, I know you just mentioned it. We both love 30 for 30s. We love sports documentaries overall. So stuff like this I can watch over and over and over with no problem. So it's good to get something new and it's refreshing. So and then the topic that this Yankees team is an important topic in sports history, especially in baseball. And I'm a big baseball guy, so it's always good to talk baseball.
so this was fun, man. And
Yeah,
for those, we're going to be doing this after every episode. So check our YouTube page after the next, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 when they air. We'll be coming, that next day, dropping our recap episodes. But also, you can follow. We're going to have other YouTube content in the coming weeks along with this, and podcast content. So we got
that's right.
an episode on our podcast feed dropping tomorrow. We're going to have other YouTube episodes dropping next week as well with this. So we got a lot of action, a lot of great content coming for you guys. So, keep up, follow on your podcast feeds, Bigger Than the Game with Jeremy and Jose. Follow here on YouTube, same, Bigger Than the Game with Jeremy and Jose. So,
Yeah, YouTube. I mean, Twitter, Instagram. You can follow us on at Bigger Game Pod on both Twitter and Instagram. And again, if you're watching a YouTube episode, you can leave a comment on the video, or if not, you want to go to Twitter or Instagram. We can definitely have those conversations on there. Let us know what you think of these first 2 episodes, and you can drop your grades on there as well, and maybe some of your biggest takes from these episodes. We would love to hear from all of you.
so for the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jose Ruiz, I'm Jeremy Dove. Thank you guys for watching. Take care.
Peace.